Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Roy Schwartz. There we go. All right. UMB.
They don't have the good music that you guys have.
Well, thanks. It's like the hot seat, right?
So I told them to act like a local university was going to win, because Georgetown didn't make it, University of Maryland, it was UMBC. Did I say that right? 16, okay. Wow. That's kind of sad. All right. So anyways, Roy, thank you for making it out here.
My pleasure.
I know that I actually saw you at an event. So we had booked Roy probably like 5 months out. And so I saw Roy at another event. I was like, hey, Roy, we got you. And he's like, wow, we're booked out that far. And I was like, yeah, we got you, because we're excited about Axios. And actually, you know, you guys have changed so fast, so rapidly, just all the traction you guys had. Like, I didn't know you guys were going to be so big now. Like, but it's literally just like 5-6 months ago.
Yeah, it's exploded.
So thank you for coming out.
Absolutely,
so we always
my pleasure.
So we always like to start out on a personal note. So
Sure.
Let's start with you. Where you raised? Where you born? Where you raised? Maybe what your parents did.
Sure.
And then maybe talk about your first. I know you're from the journal, from the journalism space, but perhaps you might have an entrepreneurial story.
Oh.
Your first entrepreneurial experience as maybe a young boy.
Sure.
With you.
Sure. So I was born in Israel. I was raised in England. I was in Israel until I was 3 years old. My family moved to England. I was there until I was 16. Then we moved to the US. We actually moved locally, so we're here in Rockville, Maryland, and I've been in this area pretty much ever since. As far as my dad has always been an entrepreneur, so he has run businesses from when he left the military in Israel. He's run probably 5, 6, 7 different companies, and so I've always watched him sort of build these companies, talked about them, and so that need to sort of build my own company and be an entrepreneur has been there from day one. As part of my very first entrepreneurial experience, my parents owned a restaurant at one point, and I would go to the restaurant, grab food from my friends, take it back to the school, and then charge them for it. And I think I made a few dollars a day doing that until my parents found out and were very upset at me.
That's good. So I really appreciate it. So I didn't know you kind of grew up here. So are you a Redskins fan or?
I am. I would say when I moved from England, it was kind of funny because, in England you have a soccer team and you never ever get close to any other soccer teams. Like that is just violence will happen. And a friend of mine took me to a game that was a Redskins-Cowboys game, and we sat amongst a whole ton of Cowboys fans. And I could not believe that this was actually happening. I thought I was going to get attacked at any minute. It was a very nerve-wracking experience for my first game.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know that the regular soccer fans, like the real soccer, football.
Yeah.
Those guys are kind of like they're like.
Oh, absolutely.
Serious,
They
like
separate.
bottles.
The stadiums are all separated and they're
It's like-
fenced and. Yeah.
Well, they're kind of like Philly fans, right?
That's what I hear. I've not been to a
Global
Philly
scale.
game, so I don't know.
So for those who are on social media, hashtag #StartupGrind at Axios at Roy L. Schwartz, right?
That's
your
right.
Twitter?
That is.
All right, so make sure you guys tweet. We're going to have some really amazing golden nuggets of wisdom here.
Hope so.
So I want to talk about before Axios.
Yeah, sure.
When you were the former chief revenue officer at Politico, kind of tell us what you did there, and then sort of like the skill sets that you acquired there that made you do your job with Axios now.
Sure. So before I went to Politico, I was not in the media space. So I used to work for the Gallup organization. I was a consultant and went to California. I was there for a couple of years. I wanted to come back to DC, and I was looking for something interesting, something fun. And I met with Jim VandeHei and John Harris, who are 2 founders of Politico. And Jim and I just hit it off straight away. We had hours of conversation. I probably came back and forth from California 5 or 6 different times. And probably everyone around me thought I was crazy because it was a print publication. And in 2007, who's going to go to a print publication that was, well, everything else was dying. But I just felt like, 1, I wanted the startup experience, and 2, there was something about the creativity that Jim and I sort of started generating even in just the interview that I thought this is going to be a lot of fun, and it was a wild ride. So we took Politico from zero. I mean, Jim and John founded it. When I joined, there was probably about 50 employees. When Jim, Mike, and I left, there were about 500 employees. We had expanded internationally. We'd taken it to Europe. We had added events. We had added video. So it had grown exponentially while I was there, and it was a lot of fun. I think in terms of the skills that I could transfer, it's just growing a startup. So when I joined, growing from 50 to 500 people, where it's the wild, wild west. There is absolutely no infrastructure. No one's helping you with anything. There are no rules. There's basically nothing, and you're creating it. To when we left, we have like an HR team, and we have a recruiting team, and you have all these teams that have been created, and infrastructure has been created. And having gone through all of that, you really, I think, understand how to scale a company. And so, everyone makes a ton of mistakes, and so we had done that. And I think, being able to go to Axios and say, okay, what are we not going to do? And in fact, we probably spent months writing down all the things we wanted to build, and also the things we knew we did not want to repeat in terms of, mistakes we may have made or lessons that we had learned.
So I know that you're credited for Politico for the Politico Pro
That's right.
subscriptions. Can you tell us about that? Because
Sure.
I'm sure that, this is a segue for another question for Axios, but like, what was Politico Pro?
Yep.
And what was great about that? And then how can you sort of use that model to do something, something to do with Axios?
So Politico Pro came out of the fact that we had all of these reporters covering all of these different policy areas, and we were an ad-driven model. And we knew we needed to diversify. We added events, but we wanted to add subscription revenue. And it really quickly became evident that if you went really deep on a topic, so whether it's healthcare, technology, energy, and you covered sort of all the ins and outs when it comes to the policy, so all the committee meetings, all the kind of boring stuff, people who are in that industry have to have it. They have to have it because their industry, their company is impacted by these policymakers, by the regulations, and they need to understand every minute change that might happen. And so we really built that out. We started with very little budget. It was not, internally, I can tell you, it was not something that was championed. It was something that Jim and I felt very strongly about, but it was a big change for the company, so it was not something that we got a lot of budget for. Yeah. It was like, hey, you can hire 6 people and let's see how it goes. But we got nearly instant traction off of it, and it grew extremely quickly. It's over half their revenue now. Because
it's a premier subscription.
It is.
Model, right?
People are paying anywhere between $8,000 and $300,000 a year.
Because you know why I'm asking that question, right?
It's to see if we would do something at Axios.
So I mean,
our famous $10,000 subscription line. Yeah, I sometimes tell Jim that he should maybe not mention exact numbers when he goes on stage, but he does not listen to me.
No, because like, I mean, and I'll get into it, but like, sure. I mean, obviously there is a flux that's happening here in the, just in the media space, because like, yeah, you're doing native advertisements and stuff, and then you guys have to figure out how to pivot and, actually find revenue streams that make sense. And so, well, I'll get to it, but let me get through this question here first. But I know that VandeHei.
You'll get it. By the end of today, you will get it.
VandeHei, and I know that, with Albrighton, who's the other guy with the CEO, and there was sort of like a struggle that was kind of happening. Yeah. And then, so this, I usually see this a lot, right? I mean, you see like an organization where you get top guys and there's a disagreement at the top, and it's like, one's going to be like, they're kicking dirt at each other, like, and then like, suddenly like someone's going to leave, right? Yeah. And so I always say that this is a great opportunity, and this is how innovation happens, because they're like, okay, well, we're going to take our idea somewhere else. And that's kind of like what happened, right? Like there was some disagreement, and then birth of Axios. And so,
yeah, I mean, there was definitely some of that. Between me, Jim, and Mike had been talking about doing something on our own for a while, especially once we established Politico in Europe. We basically did that, and said, no, this is what it's like to start it again, right? We kind of got the bug going. It's really fun in the early days. And so we were thinking about it already. So I think it's sort of, that all just came together at the right time. The kernel of a thought that started us thinking about Axios was that we started talking about, with other people in the media space too, kind of this crazy insight where when people click on an article, so let's say, I won't pick on any particular one, but you're on your favorite news site, you click on an article that you want to read, and chances of you making it past the first sentence or two, only 20% of people make it past the first sentence or two. Only 5% of people will finish the article that they started. And all of them, when you actually start talking to people, they start to feel anxious, actually, as they're reading it. I don't have time for this. Like, get to the meat. Like, what do I need to know? And so we said, well, what if you did that? What if you catered for the reader? And you said, I'm going to create a format where we cut out all the other stuff. So if you don't know who Paul Ryan is, like, don't bother going to Axios.com. Like, you will not be able to keep up because we don't give you the context. We assume you have it. But if you are up to date on the news, you are going to get caught up so quickly and so efficiently that it will become addictive. And that's what's happened. So the people that come to the site every single day have a baseline of knowledge, and they can grow it incredibly quickly. And we cover things like science, future of work, technology, healthcare. And so a professional who needs to know all of those things can get caught up extremely quickly. The other concept, so that's the format of it. But the coverage of it, what's really interesting is traditional media companies come at it with a certain point of view. I don't mean political point of view, but from a business standpoint or a technology standpoint. What's happening right now, we call a collision, which is that business, tech, politics, they're all colliding together. So think about every story that's been in the news. So think about Facebook and Russia. Right? What story is that? Is that a political story? Is that a tech story? Is that a business story? It is all of those things. It is all of those things converging. And we set up a newsroom that is unlike any other newsroom probably in the world, where we set it up to cover topics like that. So we can turn on future of work like that, driverless cars, like everything where you have to have policy, technology, business. And in many ways, the other part of it is the dissemination of information. We cover things, we call it media trends, but it really is covering like how we all consume news and information. That collision of how those things impact everything, that's the way in which we can cover topics and give you a completely full understanding of whether it's Tesla, whether it is what's happening right now with Toys R Us. Like, all of those things are super interesting. Like, Toys R Us isn't just going bankrupt. There's a private equity story there. There's a reason. There's the issues in terms of the way in which they were put into debt and bankruptcy. We can cover it in a really unique way that most other publications just are not able to do. And we can do it in about 250 words. So it takes you about 30 seconds.
Right, so you definitely answered my question, because the aha moment, that was the aha moment with what you had said with the statistics, first 5 sentences or 5 words?
It's the first 2 sentences, which is about 200 words. Wow. And that's why our format is about 200 words. Got it. So we basically said, why are we trying to get people to do something they're not doing? We're going to do something that they already are doing, which is they're reading the first sentence or two. Right. The problem with the typical first sentence or two at a news organization is it is built to give you no information, to drag you down the page. And the only reason they do that is to serve ads. We don't do that, so we immediately get to the heart of it, and more importantly, we tell you why it matters. We actually say why this matters.
So I like that. Like, I know that so many different organizations, they have like, news organizations have different ways of doing things. Like Upworthy, they always do the A/B testing on the headlines, and they republish the. Do you guys do anything like that?
We do not have the time to do that. So especially now in the Trump age, something happens, and we need to be ready immediately. And I mean, Politico really invented, and Jim, I would say, invented the sort of like quick turn scoops. And we've taken that to another level because we're able to deliver it in smart brevity. So when a reporter needs to write something that they just learned, a key quote, a key fact, some new information, they don't have to write a 800-word article around it. They can literally take that and put it out there immediately, because that is our format. And that's why we break so many stories. It's why, if you go there, it can become your only news source. And usually that's not the case. We will take, if someone else broke a story, we'll report that too. If the New York Times broke something, the Washington Post broke something, we'll put it in there, but we'll give you a 200-word summary of it, and we'll give you context around it. We'll tell you why it matters, and that's something that you don't otherwise get.
So, everybody knows Politico, everybody, that's like the brand.
Yeah.
Axios, first of all, what does that mean? And
Yeah.
secondly, what other names did you guys come up with? I'd like to hear that.
There's
my favorite game.
There's a great Medium post that Jim and I wrote about naming the company because it is so painful, especially in news where you need the .com. Like, you're not taken seriously if you don't have the .com. You need something that no one else has, and every name, because news is one of these really old industries, every name had been done. I mean, every name. For a little while, we were Vital. We were First for a little while. We were Level for a little while. When I say that, the lawyers killed them all. So we would have a name, we'd fall in love with it, we would take it to the lawyers, and we'd live with it for about 3 weeks while they were doing their search, and then they'd be like, no. And we'd be like, are you sure? And they'd be like, yes.
.com.
Yes.
You want to own
in some cases, we had the I was doing some crazy stuff to get the .coms. You should definitely read the Medium article. It's kind of funny. But we got to Axios when we were thinking about, okay, what do we really want to be? And how can our name remind us of our mission? And that was to be worthy of people's time, attention, and most importantly, your trust. And remember, this is before fake news really hit mainstream. So we were sort of ahead of thinking about, like, trust is going to be huge. And worthy was the word that we thought, okay, that captures it. And then we started looking it up in different languages. And actually, my wife one night was like, Axios. And I was like, that sounds great.
Your wife said that?
She did.
It's right here.
I
Axios. Okay, great.
There's an argument between our editor-in-chief and my wife on who discovered it first. We were on Slack, and it was kind of pinging back and forth.
Well, that's awesome. I know you guys have 2 boys, too.
We do.
Did she name them, too?
She
did? Okay. Just actually, I didn't name my own children. It was my parents did it, so.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to, because one of the questions I had for you was, how important is the format of the news? You kind of answered it, but I just wanted to kind of regurgitate this again, okay?
Sure.
Because you said, like, articles have feature bullet points for easy scanning, right? Which you'll see.
Yep.
And then you'll see it like, hey, this is the title, and then, like, this is what you need to know about it if you want to continue to read on, right?
Yeah.
And then everything.
If you haven't been to it, you should
Yeah,
go
you can
check
do it
it
right
out.
now. Yeah.
AXIOS.com. And what you'll see is every article has the same format. It is a headline, an image, an infographic, a video, and then it gets right into it. And sometimes, most of the time, we'll use bullet points because that's an easy way to get information. We always have what we call an axiom, which is a why it matters, or be smart, or go deeper, that sort of like encapsulates the concept that we're trying to share.
And it has like 5 to 6 slides, short laid out versions of stories that scroll into the other.
So actually, it's an endless scroll.
Let's scroll, okay.
And it is the closest thing, if you've never been to it, is it's like Facebook with nothing but news, and you don't have to click out. It's all self-contained. When we do have more information, not everything can be written in 250 words, there's a read more button. If you click it, you don't get sent somewhere else. It just pushes down and opens up, and you can read it right there. And if you keep scrolling, you're right back where you were.
So I've been hearing different characterization of Axios. I've heard one person say, it's The Economist plus Twitter. It's, Vox plus smart people. I mean, it's just different things out there.
I don't know how Ezra would feel about that.
Right. So do you agree with that? Like, Economist plus Twitter?
I think Economist plus Twitter is pretty good. When we were in the Valley, we met with a really famous venture capitalist, and he said, "You're safe, smart Twitter." And I was like, I like that. So that's memorable. So safe, smart Twitter. And I think, look, where do we want to end up? Like, we want to be in a place where you can go and know that you're reading quality news and information that you can trust from a variety of sources, but sort of written in our style, and get caught up quickly. And that's why, like, when we think about it, like Twitter, if you take away the noise, and you like the sort of like shortness of our style, like that's why we say Twitter. We use Economist because Economist, stood for a really high level of journalism, professionalism, and news you could trust. And I think merging those things together is.
So obviously talking about high level, trustworthy, in today's world. So I want to ask you this, right? Because the media industry is really grappling with this, and it's especially in the Trump world.
Yes.
With fake news. And so again, if you ever see look at the tabloids. Tabloids is exactly that. They're trying to get you with that headline first.
Right.
And it's like boom, boom, boom. Like how has that affected your business? Has it been good for it? And what I mean by that, it's like people can't tell the difference sometimes between real news and fake news.
Right. Yes.
And especially if they're using the same technique. How do you combat that?
So I think we were super lucky, right? We launched, I thought when Jim and John launched Politico, that timing was genius, right? Because this was, you had Obama and you had Hillary and it was a tight election. And so when we left, we were like, oh, we'll never be able to replicate that incredible timing. Boy, were we wrong. Oh my God. So, we got out and we were convinced, just like everyone else, that Hillary was going to win. And so, that was our mindset. But it became clear as we were getting ready to launch what was going to happen. And of course, by the time we did launch, we launched with an interview of Donald Trump. So the very first thing we did on January 18th last year when we launched, right before he became president, was his final interview before the inauguration. And when we think about fake news, I think it's easy to combat. Don't read your news on social media, right? Go to legitimate sites and you won't get fake news. Fake news is there because one, people can monetize it. Two, you've got people from other countries trying to influence our democracy. But you're not going to get fake news on legitimate news sites. And so don't read your news on social media. Or know the brand that you're clicking on. Don't click on crap that's from some URL that you don't know.
Can you talk about your fact check icon? You guys have?
We have something called Facts Matter.
Oh, Facts Matter. Okay.
So if something happens that you got a lot of people sort of debating the truth, especially if it's partisan, we will do something called Facts Matter because we are a nonpartisan publication. A lot of people really, what does that even mean? It means we report the news. We don't get into opinion. We don't provide opinion. Our reporters, you will not see them on Twitter spouting off opinion. It is critical, we believe, to be unbiased. And so that means, if the president does something that is good, we will say, this is good, and here's why it's good. If he does something bad, we'll say it's bad. But we're not going to get into the opinion behind it. We will report, the facts. And that's what's critical in this day and age.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you guys have done recently. I don't know if it's recently, but the Scoop News, where you guys are breaking.
We try to do that the whole time.
With Trump, it's
we are one of the things. It's an advantage that we have. It's not something that you could replicate, but our reporters are just wired in. And with the Trump administration, that was the other benefit, is no one was wired in. But Mike Allen and Jonathan Swan really quickly became wired in. And so you could get a lot of information. Now, they'll tell you, and any reporter will tell you, that the White House is a sieve. Literally, it leaks more than any other administration has ever leaked in the history of mankind. And Trump likes it that way. He genuinely likes the drama, and he views everything as a TV show, and that's real. He thinks about how often is he mentioned, and when he's on the news, and he treats every day like it's an episode of a show. And so that's why you'll see him, if there's no calm, there's no calm because that means the ratings are down, right? So you gotta do a tweet to get the ratings up.
You guys should do something like what CNN did. He's like, hey, Trump, if you're watching this, flicker your lights.
Yeah.
He did that.
I don't think he likes CNN very much.
So I wanted to do a little bit shift here because you're more of the operations guy.
I'm the
right?
business guy.
You're the business guy.
Yep.
And so I wanted to talk about just when you guys started, because you're in a business, first of all, it's extremely saturated, right? And Shane Smith from Vice had said, be prepared for a bloodbath,
Yeah.
right? because it's so saturated. So like, how do you like balance that? I mean, you're in a business where it's extremely competitive, and you got to find a business model that's going to be bringing in money, like the subscription Premier, but you guys are right now
all ad driven. All ad driven.
Native,
apparently, it's falling to pieces,
right,
but not everywhere.
Native advertising, right?
That's right.
And so, yeah, let's tell us more about that, because like
Yeah.
it's just like everyone's just kind of like,
I mean,
how are you guys going to survive like in this kind of climate?
I would say people thought we were crazy. Like, you're going to start a media company in 2017? Are you out of your mind? Like, how are you going to do that? Like, there's complete saturation. There's so much news and information that companies are folding. And there was already signs. Of course, it has accelerated since then. You know, Mashable's valuation. You know, people missing their numbers. Vice, Fox, BuzzFeed, all missing their numbers. That stuff is now becoming, you know, unfortunately, a recurring issue. We didn't see it that way. We thought, look, yes, there's a lot of news and information, but people are really struggling. The issue that they're having is they're feeling overwhelmed. There's more email, there's Slack, there's social media, and before you had to deal with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 news sources. Now there's hundreds, thousands that you see, whether it's social media or whether you're going to websites, but you literally are competing against the world. And so what we heard, we did a listening tour, and what we heard was that people felt overwhelmed. And so our thing was, if we can solve that feeling, we will get hyper-addicted users who will come back every single day because we're giving them exactly what they want. And everything we thought about was reader first. And so if you go to the site, it is like efficiency. Like, that's what we were thinking about, reader efficiency. How can I get you the most information as quickly as possible without, you don't see any pop-ups, there's no banner ads on our site. It is all in service of the reader, and we've been rewarded for that. Like, we have hundreds of thousands of people that read our newsletter every single day. We started with 0, like we didn't bring over any lists or anything, we started with 0. And every day on the website, every single day, there are at least 300,000 people that come every day, sometimes multiple times a day, to get caught up on this. And that number is growing, and that's the sort of the numbers we track, is how many people on a daily basis rely on us to get their news and information. And that's a key measure.
I wanted to talk about that newsletter.
Yeah.
Because you guys have an insane open rate on your newsletter. What is it, and what's the average?
So the average open rate of a news publication is maybe 20%. Our open rate's 50%. And by the way, even 50% doesn't sound great, but remember, you can't get all reporting on email. So there's probably 10 or 15% that you're never going to get to 100% because.
So what's the secret?
Addictive content. If anyone's not subscribed to Axios AM, I would highly recommend it. Like, regardless of your industry, if you don't open it every single day within a week, you can email me and yell at me. Like, I'm Roy at Axios. I've taken that bet with multiple people. I sat across from a CEO of a major platform who, and I would say every single day, by the way, Mark reads this, Cheryl reads it, Evan Spiegel reads it, so you're in good company. But I was sitting across from someone who didn't read it, and said, like, oh, I am so on top of the news. I get hundreds of news sources. I don't need another news source. And I said, I will take a bet. Like, just read it every single day for a week, and then tell me that it's not the best thing that you've ever read. Mm-hmm. And I got $100 the other day. Yeah. So I would do it. Like if you are wondering, like, what people in the administration, people on Capitol Hill, you know, whether you're Jamie Dimon or Bill Gates, what they're reading every day, Axios AM. Mike Allen is a genius at summarizing the news and information that you need.
By the way,
every morning.
Yeah. By the way, are you guys going to be at the White House Correspondent Dinner?
We will be there, of course.
You have an extra seat?
Talk later.
Go talk later again. #StopGrind at Axios at Roy L. Schwartz. So I wanted to talk about when you guys first launched. Yeah. And so again, this is why I think this story is really amazing. When you guys first launched, it's not like you're like, hey, we launched, and then let's just wait for people to come in. And it's just like, beep, beep. You guys had, you know, product market fit from day one, meaning that, I mean, I heard the first 7 months of Axios. I mean, I just heard, it's rumored.
Yeah, it's rumored. It's out there.
You guys brought in close to $10 million worth of business.
May have been more.
Maybe more? Okay, so what?
How do you do that?
So, but what I'm saying is, like, I see too many, like, Silicon Valley company that are like, oh, look at us, and then they're like, oh, that's very hot, and then there's a lot of money dumped into it. They'll get a lot of users, but no revenue.
Right.
So I guess
the difference is we're not specifically in the tech space. So I'd say the first hire we made was a chief technology officer. That's the very first hire. The next hire was a chief design officer. We're firm believers in technology and design, and hopefully it's reflected in what we do. So we are in a different business than a technology company that's trying to prove that their product is something that people want. So I can't say that every company should put revenue first. What I can say is that if you have an opportunity that is clear that you can generate revenue and it's not going to hurt your ability to gain users, then I would do that. And that's what we did. So we said that for us, actually, they go very much hand in hand. They don't hurt. In fact, if anything, they benefit. So we do events, they're all sponsored. If we didn't have a sponsor, we wouldn't be able to do the events. So, everyone who comes to our events gains from, we interviewed Mark Cuban, we interviewed Mike Pence, we've interviewed the Bidens, we interviewed Sean Parker when he was talking about the addiction of Facebook, and that broke a lot of news. All of that was because we were able to sell sponsorships to it, and so that helped generate the content. So they really go hand in hand in our business.
I was going to say, we should do a joint event, and Mark Cuban start.
You don't have any sponsors.
We're Start Brand for a reason. So, yeah, pizza. Have you guys been to an Axios event? It's like amazing. Yeah, they do it.
They're free.
Yeah.
They're free, and if you sign up for the newsletters, they tell you when they're going to be. We've got a great one that's coming up at Howard. That's going to be really fantastic. Jamie Dimon's going to be there.
That's amazing.
We've got Steve Case will be there, so that one's coming up next week.
So let's go back to your business model here.
Yeah.
So again, the whole native advertisement, and then eventually you're going to have to figure out the whole subscription. Are you guys going to eventually this premium subscription model?
I'll talk about advertising for a second. So I was chief revenue officer of Politico and spent a lot of time on the advertising side. And what I didn't like about where things were going was that banner advertising was a distraction. Like, people who read it hate it. Why do you get an ad while reading an article? It's counterintuitive. Like, I'm reading something and then something interrupts my experience, and like, I would think less, not more, of the company whose ad popped up on the screen. So that doesn't work, especially pop-ups and pop-unders and all this stuff that goes with it. Then everyone sort of pivoted to this long-form native ad, right? So all publishers did long-form native, and what they said was, hey, look, we know how to create content, we know how to generate audience, people are reading our content, therefore, if you write in our style, or better yet, we do it for you, then people will read your content. It's built on the false premise. People aren't reading their content, right? People are only reading the first 200 words. So there's a big problem. People don't want to read 800 words, and they definitely don't want to read 800 words about why X company is the best company on the planet. What we did is we solved a very real problem, and that took off. And then, so the reason we did so well from a revenue standpoint was the product fit. The ad unit that we put in our content, it is between articles. It is not inside of an article, so it doesn't interrupt when you're in the middle of reading. But as you're scanning through, kind of like Facebook, you'll get an ad. It is in the same place as you were reading editorial content, and now you're looking at a branded content post. It takes up the entire screen of your iPhone, and we don't even talk about the desktop. 80% of consumption is on the phone. So that ad takes up the entire screen. And the company is able to, in that moment, either capture your attention or not. And now it's on them to create great content, to create a great ad. And the type of ads we do are not, they're not about products per se. They're usually about a company. So it might be about Verizon. It might be about this initiative, right? It might be about, hey, we recaptured space. We provide it for startups. It might be about hiring veterans. It might be about women and minorities. But it's usually that corporate social responsibility messaging. And that actually takes a little bit of space. And what we said is, you can tell that story in about 30 seconds if you do it effectively, and you can do it over a series of cards because our audience is coming back every single day, so you don't have to tell them everything all at once. You can tell it to them as they come back. So that ad had a great fit, and it really took off much bigger. We thought we were going to launch with 4 sponsors. We launched with a dozen.
Wow.
So it really took off. As we think about subscriptions, what we really think about is as we generate more and more content, there's value in the insights and there's value in the filtering of that content. And the more content you generate, the more value you actually can create from filtering it and providing insights to it. So in the future, as we sort of dive deep into certain areas, that's the type of subscription product that we would build. It wouldn't be for individuals, it would be for companies. And it might be in areas that they're struggling to understand because of that collision, right? So as we talked about, like business, tech, politics smashing together because everything is converging, that's the area that we would provide additional analysis and information on.
Yeah, not to kind of beat the dead horse about the subscription model. I mean, we're sort of, I feel like DC does this pretty well, right? You got the CEBs of the world,
Yep.
You got the advisory board, where it's like, and lots of think tanks and lobbyist groups that will buy reports for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that totally makes sense to me.
And Bloomberg in the business space, right? So yeah, it's out there.
So it was interesting. I talked about CSR and sort of like the good filling topics and stuff. So what I like about DC area is that there's a lot of social enterprise startups here.
Yep.
And a lot of those social companies are sort of, one of their sort of key things about what they do is sort of the mission, but more importantly, the culture of their company. And so can you talk about Axios? What does the culture in Axios look like? What does that mean to you? And is that an important thing for Axios?
Super critical. We spent a really long time when it was me, Jim, Mike, and Kayla Brown, who came with us as well from Politico. So the 4 of us spent a lot of time, usually on my porch, thinking about what the culture of the company would be. And we actually wrote down the mission and the values and all that stuff before there was even an employee, right? It's kind of crazy when you think about it. But that stuff was really important because we knew that if you want to scale and scale quickly, and we thought, we'll get to 100 employees in a couple of years. We did it in 1 year. So thank God we spent the time on the front end sort of thinking about this stuff. If you want to scale quickly, you need to have thought through things related to culture. I will say a mistake that I made is I didn't think about the title structure. So when we hired people, these guys are like, the same mistake, right? It's a nightmare. When we hired people, we hired amazing people, really ambitious people. And we usually just went with whatever title they had, right, from wherever they came. Don't do that. You better have a hierarchy to the titles, and you better have thought through the culture and the mission and HR-related issues before you have an employee, because it's really hard afterwards.
I still want to stick to the
what does the culture mean?
No, but because you talked about the title thing, I've noticed about your new recruit with Dan
Primack.
Primack,
Yeah.
because he was like the editor at large, and then like chief editor or something, a senior editor. And then now he is what's the title that you have right now?
I don't know what Dan's title is. Business editor, maybe?
Yeah, business editor.
Maybe business editor?
So
I mean, editorial titles are a little bit easier.
Okay.
Business titles are the ones where, are you going to use manager? Are you going to use senior manager? Are you going to use director?
Right.
That's where it gets
I just thought that was kind of interesting. But okay, so I'm going to go back to this whole culture.
Sure.
But let's talk about talent acquisition here.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan Primack is that guy's really huge. And so what sort of
and if you don't know Dan, if you guys are raising money, if you're a startup, Dan covers the startup scene. He covers private equity, venture capital, and who's raising what. He probably breaks more scoops in that space than anyone else. It should be a daily read for anyone in the startup space.
Senior editor at Fortune, and he had this term sheet, right? The NCAA tournament bracket pool for its readers. Actually, I have a question here: who will win? But Don't say UMDC or whatever.
No idea.
Okay, but so back to Dan though.
Yeah.
Like, how do you convince somebody from like Fortune senior editor to join a startup?
We have top reporters from the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, Politico, Fortune. They all came, and the reason that they came was because when we met with them, they all realized they came to the same conclusion we had. If you're a great reporter, you are pulling your own stats all the time, and they all saw it. Do you know how disheartening it is for a reporter to write 1,000 words and realize that even though he reached 1 million people, that none of them made it to the bottom of the story? And what we said was sort of like, for them, like it made them understand what was happening. They thought it might be them. It's not them. It is our attention spans are shrinking. Our brains are rewired. We have to have our phone on all the time. And so we don't have time. We feel anxious. You've got to get it done in 250 words or less. You can read more if the person wants, but you've got to give them what they want. You've got to get to it. So when we sat down with Dan and we said, this is the premise that we're going to build the company around, he was like, sign me up. I mean, we really went from a conversation about him being interested in it to him doing it. And I think we made him an offer right there on the spot because Dan is amazing. I mean, he's just, a force of nature in terms of breaking stories and writing a lot of content. And we like newsletter writers because they tend to write short and have an audience that comes with them. But we knew straight away, and I think he did too. I think he took a day or two to think about it.
Does Dan get any startup tip news from you?
Oh, in terms of like anything I might know?
Well, I'm saying someone in this room may want to get some coverage.
You can email all of our. Actually, this is really interesting. If you just reply to any of our newsletters, you go straight to the writer. So if you reply to Dan, just hit reply to his. It goes to Dan, and it comes from Dan.
Okay.
So our system does that, but it's not filtered. Like Mike Allen gets all those emails.
So what's the secret of having Dan cover your startup? Like, how should we format it? Can you give us some ideas here?
Listen, a lot of people think that what they have is news, what they're thinking through a press release. It's hard. It's hard to break through. It has to be something real. So when you're pitching a reporter, you have to think about the angle that makes it interesting to them and would make it interesting to thousands of people. Okay. I mean, the good part about what we do is we don't need it to be essential for 1 million people. Like Dan's newsletter is very niche, very precise. If it's interesting to the venture capital and private equity community, and you have something to say about that, and it's innovative and it's new, then we'll use it.
Well, you guys had a recent scoop news, and I'm not sure if Dan wrote that, but it was Trump approving, or he liked the idea of a national 5G network.
Yeah. Must have been a slow news day, and he was like, "What do I do today?"
Is it that kind of like that sort of news that would?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's big news. I mean, bigger news was Trump crushing the Qualcomm Broadcom deal in that's unheard of, right? So you're in a news environment where you can't blink because news is being made every single day purposefully. So that to me was like that's huge. Like that type of thing just hasn't happened before.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give you guys some nuggets here, startups. like how can we pitch Axios to cover you? I want to go back to the idea of the culture, because the thing is, like, culture in a startup, and I feel like, Startup Grind is in 350 cities all over the world. I look at interviews all the time of founders that we interview. And one thing that keeps on popping up here, specifically in the Q&A, it's always been this idea of culture, right? And how important it is. And so I wanted to go back into to what you guys have in your offices.
Oh yeah.
You guys have walls with quotes, and you have suck rolls downhill, brevity is confidence, length is fear. You guys have a blue couch called Relaxos.
And we have Snaxios.
Snaxios of that's
I walked by. There was a newsroom meeting right before I left, and Nick, who's our editor-in-chief, was talking to the newsroom, and this is what I heard as I was walking by. He's like, guys, we've got to talk about length. You guys are killing me here. 400 words. 400 words. Who has time for that? It was hysterical. You'd never hear that in another news. It was just hysterical as I was walking through. But yeah, we have sayings. We actually turned it into a Slack channel. So we used to print them out and put them on the wall. And so now we have wall quotes is the Slack channel. And it's when someone says something that's really funny or sort of out of context funny, We used to print it out and put it on the wall. We ran out of space, so now we just Slack it. And we have all these great sayings. And it helps because we are a workforce that has people in San Francisco, we have people in New York, we have people all over the country. Our developers, we hire them wherever they are. So, they really need to understand what our culture is, and Slack is incredible at helping to do that. But we sort of infuse it with smart brevity. We sort of practice what we preach, so everything we write internally, we write an internal newsletter, we write internal messaging. Everything is smart brevity. You will not get like a long email from any of us. And we will do these things like wall quotes that kind of give off the sort of fun but very serious at the same time, like culture that we've created.
What's the quirkiest thing you guys done as a company? Like just
A quirky thing.
yeah.
I don't know if we do anything. We're about to add a ping pong table in our office.
What are you gonna call it?
I don't know. Someone will Axiosify that.
Okay, got it.
We do have a Slack channel just for sneakers. I am not on it, but there's a Slack channel just for it. I think it's called Kixius.
Just like whatever the word.
iOS.
EOS.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So actually, are you guys hiring? I mean, you guys are obviously
Absolutely.
hiring. So
we have
what do you
30 open positions. Yeah.
30?
30 open positions.
And so what do you look for when you're saying, hey, that person looks like an Axios?
Yeah, I mean, this is more internal, but we say killers with humility. And what we mean by that is like people who are super ambitious, who know what they want to do, but they do it in a way that they themselves are humble, and they're good people. Like we will not hire somebody just because they're super talented, but they don't get along with us. So personality and culture are a huge issue for us, but we look for crazy ambition in every role, in every single role. So there's no role where we're looking for someone to punch a clock. Every role has to have somebody who comes in and like we joke, like I don't literally mean somebody who wants my job, but that would ignite me. Like if someone said, I want your job in 5 years from now, I'm like, hell yeah, like that's the person I want to hire.
Yeah. No, that's I mean, DC. It's a very
it is. There's a lot of ambitious people.
Very, very just because of the federal government, there's the law firms,
I see the other side of it. Okay. So whether it's I feel like the startup scene is just about to take off in DC. When you think about what 1776 sort of ignited, and now Alley, and you've got WeWorks and Make offices where we are. Mm-hmm. There's startups everywhere, and they are full of really ambitious people. Mm-hmm. And so I think about like the city and how it's evolved. Great restaurants, the Wharf. Okay. So I think we're just at the beginning of DC becoming an incredible city, and don't be surprised if Amazon doesn't move here.
Do you have any scoop on that?
He owns a house here, and he owns the Washington Post. Like, I would take a bet on it.
Yeah, how much you want to bet?
I'll bet. You bet against it? I'll bet it.
No, this is okay. So again.
Yeah.
What I loved what you just said. DC is going to take off, but I feel that we need folks more like you to sort of teach companies out here and mentor and help them. Like, hey, this is how you raise $30 million from VCs from New York, right. From the West Coast. And so let's talk about that, right? Like, you guys raised $30 million from the
not all at once.
Well, no. So $10 million. Let's first talk about the first one. $10 million on your first try is insane, right? I mean, it's and then you got it from Lerer.
Yeah,
Hippeau.
Ken Lerer and Eric Hippeau were the masterminds behind Huffington Post, and they started a VC fund that is just media companies. So they're very specific, although they do own a drone company and a couple of other offshoots. But I mean, they really understand media. Right. Greycroft has investments in everything from the skim, and they also do a bunch of technology. They're a large VC firm. NBC obviously is a strategic. They want to invest in new media companies.
And you have Andy Lack.
Andy Lack's on the board.
He's the president.
He is. And Lorraine Powell-Jobs, which is part of Emerson Collective, they just bought The Atlantic, which is why more people would know them now. But at the time, she was just beginning to get into wanting to fund media companies specifically. So
and did those come in through Ken Lerer?
No, a mix. So So we didn't know Ken. I knew of him obviously because of Huffington Post, and I told Jim and Mike, like, we should find a way to get in front of Ken Lerer, because I think if he likes it, like, it will start to gain some traction. So we set up a meeting, and we pitched him on it. He loved it and started to bring in other people for sure. And then separately, we reached out to a few people that we knew. Now, keep in mind, reporters are extremely well connected. Right. Part of their job is to be well connected. Yeah. So, Mike is probably the most well connected person maybe in this country. So that's not an advantage that every startup has. The advice I could give there is a little bit different. You don't raise a $10 million seed round, right? Unless you know people.
So it's really built on trust and credibility. And so how would a company out here, kind of rub shoulders with someone like you to help them get introductions to,
Well, I used to be, I'm taking a year off, but I helped put together K Street Capital for those people that have pitched K Street Capital. And that's a group of angel investors that are here in DC, mainly trying to invest in startups that touch the regulatory space. So if you think you're going to bump up against that, that's where K Street is really helpful. So a company like Uber, like back in the day, would have been perfect, right? They're going to struggle with regulatory issues. K Street has a bunch of lobbyists, a bunch of media people who can help with all aspects of that. And so we invested in companies like that. And as long as you have a good pitch, you would get into a company like K Street. I'd say, look, VCs in Silicon Valley are getting pitched all the time. VCs in DC need deal flow. So if you have a good idea, you are going to get considered. People will read your business plan. It's not that they have a pile that they never get to. The Valley, that might be the case.
So obviously you're one of the filtering conduits, right? For K Street. So reach out to him if what he just said, anything that's regulatory hacking, right? Something that could disrupt.
I'm taking a year off because there's a little bit going on right now. But K Street has kstreet.vc is the website, and you can apply right there, and they'll get back to you.
Are you sure it's a year off? Because Trump's only been in office for a year. Got 3 more years. It's going to be pretty busy, is what I'm saying.
It'll be very busy.
So I wanted to go into the topic of DC tech, right? You could have launched your business in New York. I don't know about,
I don't think my kids would have been happy about that.
Okay, but that's legit. Why did you guys stay here in DC versus, moving somewhere? There's only 3 of you guys.
It wasn't, I will say, that was not a conscious decision of, let's move to DC, or we were already here. But what was important to us was that we were going to hire talent wherever they were. So from day one, we said, if the talent's in New York, that's where we're going to hire. If they're in San Francisco, we're going to hire them from there. We weren't going to force people to be in DC. And, but it has not been, for us, it is not a disadvantage. Like, our entire tech team is either in New York or spread out throughout the country. It probably would have been hard for us to find the entire tech talent that we built all in DC. I think that would have been very hard.
Because I've heard different takes on that. Because they say that the tech talent here, there's a lot more talent, and not only that, they're loyal versus like Silicon Valley, and maybe
they're just waiting for an offer.
So are you guys experiencing that? You guys are having a hard time finding tech talent here versus New York?
Look, again, we don't favor a particular city. It's easier for us if someone's in DC or New York or San Francisco because we have offices there. When I say offices, I mean WeWorks.
Or the alley.
Yeah, but we will hire tech talent. We've got people in Michigan, we've got people in Ohio. So we don't think about the city per se. We take the best applicant, and we just are very discerning, as any company should be. And ideally, the first few hires had to have some background in media or content management systems, so that narrowed it down.
So before we open it for Q&A, and I think we'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, could you tell us the future of Axios, what it's going to look like in a year? Geez, in 6 months, it's so
it changes so much.
1 year, 5 years, and 10 years.
Sure. We really do think weeks out, not even months out. We try and have goals for the end of the year. That's about as far as it gets. my hope is that by the end of the year, you start seeing content in all sorts of different areas presented in our style, so that whatever your favorite topic is, you're going to start seeing it there. Now we start with sort of the inner group, which is like the closest. So we covered politics and business and tech, and now we're adding cybersecurity launches next week. So as you sort of think about that growth, it's going to be topics like that, driverless cars and automation, future mobility, those types of things. What's that?
Video?
We do video now.
Okay.
Yeah, we have video. So I think by the end of the year, what you're going to see is more content written in smart brevity, a growing audience against that, lots more video, lots more events.
Okay, we're going to open it up to Q&A.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, look at that, all those questions. Okay, well, let's see here. Anyone who's VIP City Pass first? Okay, yeah, sorry guys, you're going to have to buy a City Pass later, okay?
Yeah, it's worth that $100, guys. Roy, when do you guys think you'll branch out outside of the US?
Oh, I did register every URL that I could find globally. We are really focused. When you're a media company especially, you got to focus in, but I think this is true for any company trying to find the product fit. We are zeroed in on a type of audience. So we are looking for people who read professional content, and it is US only. And that's probably going to be the case for at least a couple of years. We've got to focus in, and until everyone knows the name Axios, I just reached the point, oh man, I just reached the point where nearly every meeting I took, people knew who POLITICO was. And now I take meetings and some people have no idea who Axios is, and that hurts me. So until I reach that point, that's when when you go into any meeting and everyone knows your name, then you can start to think about, Europe.
Yeah, we've talked before, so it'll probably be 6 months out.
Oh, you good?
I'm done.
Okay, Gus, you have a question? Yes,
Roy at Axios.
Any question?
So I really resonated with the earlier days of you and Jim on the porch, kick it back and kind of looking at everything before the calm before the storm, right?
Yeah.
And I really resonated with that. And you mentioned the Wild Wild West starting everything up and then doing it in the UK and adding video. We all know that video is very powerful. How are you going to take your platform of really quick, right?
We call it smart brevity.
Right. How are you going to do that with video? And I really like the approach of scratching your own itch. I'm sure when you met with Mike and Jen, you're like, look, you couldn't find what you created.
That's right.
Right. So you created. How can you do that in the video world, but also keep the scratching your own itch? Let's get to the point. You want more, you click here.
Yeah. So you can see the videos we've done. We've experimented a lot. Some of them are great. Some of them are experiments. They're all really short. So when I say short, they're 90 seconds, 2 minutes max. Some of them are even shorter than that. They move very quickly, and they're all trying to share with you something that will make you smart. And so when you watch them, you'll see our reporters talk about some scoop that they broke, but then up will pop our axioms, like why it matters, be smart, go deeper. So it ties in sort of our written style with our video style. So you can see them on the site. If you go to Axios, there's a series called Smarter Faster, which has a lot of videos, probably 50 at this point. We do, I think, 1 a week. And then there's videos that you'll see on our YouTube channel or on Facebook or on the site, but as a post. They're also and you'll see in their experiments that we'll do different things. We'll do like 5 where it's a reporter just talking to camera, but with graphics overlaid. Some are just graphics, some are just video. We're trying to see what works best to convey that smart brevity style. It is harder in video.
Okay, we got one more question. It's Startup Grind volunteer, so sorry guys.
Community manager.
Oh, community manager.
Thank you. I worked hard for that promotion. Thank you. I have a question about partisanship, et cetera, and bias for Axios. I know that Mike Allen is famously nonpartisan.
He doesn't even vote.
I've heard him say that. I'm curious, though, in the age of the media where pandering to your audience, whether it's Fox News, CNN, you name it, gets you eyeballs, gets you ratings, et cetera, viewership. Do you see yourselves going towards a
Never.
bias ever, and why not?
Because the audience that we don't care about the click, and we don't care about the raw number of people going to an article. That is, we wrote an article way before we launched. Jim wrote this article, it's a great one, called The Crap Trap. And anyone who's like in or around media should read it. But basically it was a race to the bottom. All these websites created clickbait content that was meaningless, and you can get people to click. If I want 2 million clicks on a story, I can guarantee you I can get 2 million clicks on a story. But you're going to lose that person. That person is not going to be engaged. They're not even going to know which website they're on. So for us, it was much more important to get daily users. And so for that, you have to have real content, and you've got to show that you don't have bias. There's plenty of people that want bias, but there's so many places to get that. What differentiated us was the format, was the smart, and was the unbiased nature of the content that we did, and you can't really get that anywhere else.
It's actually really interesting when you say that he doesn't vote. Like,
No?
would that ever be, like a policy, like to ensure,
no, what we do,
like bipartisan?
No, what we
vote?
do talk about though is that our reporters should be very careful about what they tweet. People don't want to see your opinions on things. There's too much opinion out there already. No one wants to hear what you have to say when it comes to a certain topic, except your breaking news and uncovering facts and information. That, like, you let your expertise talk. You don't need to spout off on, something that is opinion.
So one last question,
Yeah.
or actually two, because I'm the interviewer, I can ask any questions. So two last questions. One is, I'll just ask the first one and then I'll ask the later one. But what's the best piece of advice you would have given yourself 15 years ago?
I wish I'd just done a startup 15 years ago.
Okay.
I so wanted to do one, and I got scared, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't do it. And I wish I had. I'd built a bunch of side businesses, but I didn't do it as my main business, and I wish I had.
Okay. Well, you're on a good track right now. I mean, with Axios, it's going to be but we're depending on you guys, like DC Tech. DC Tech-ish.
No, hopefully real
DC
tech.
Okay,
We have a really big tech team.
Okay, good. All right. And the last question is, and this is probably the most important question, I ask all of our speakers, the last 6 years we've done this. Ready?
Yeah.
You're like looking at me like, oh God, what is he going to ask me? Who's your favorite superhero and why?
Now, I feel like I want to say Iron Man because you got a businessman who somehow becomes. But Deadpool is probably I just turning to the camera and just the Ferris Bueller ending in the last one was just genius.
So that's the last word that Roy Schwartz said. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.